Hey everybody, wanted to do my TBR for 2020. Next year's coming. I had a goal of 12 books this year, knocked it out of the park, hit 22. Goal for next year is to be 50 books. These are the books I can think of on my TBR right now. I know it's going to grow and change and shift. You look at my Goodreads, which I'd love you guys to join. There'll be a link in the description. I've got like 285 books in there. So this is definitely not all that I've got, but most of these I have in physical copies. So wanted to show you what I was planning on physically reading. Have a couple ebooks that I'm going to read as well. Graphic novels, classics, a couple rereads so that I can review stuff on the channel. Really excited to jump into it, and here we go. So if you saw my last video, I recently partnered with Bookie Club, and I want to do these books, which The Blade Itself, Leviathan Wakes, and Promise of Blood. They have a book club, book e-club, obviously. So they're really new, and they wanted to partner with some booktubers to kind of get the word out. And I'm really excited because you can jump in, and it'd be a free book club. And I wanted to read with you guys and be working on the same things. And I'm horrible about readathons, but through this service, these 3 books I've got up there, and you have the ability to vote on what the club wants to do next. I voted for Leviathan Wakes, but I'm excited to read any of these 3. They all look really, really cool. Let me kind of describe them to you a little bit. Promise of Blood looks super cool. I just got done reading Lightbringer, and this is a flintlock fantasy where they have guns, and they do some cool things with black powder, and starts out with a coup. Brandon Sanderson actually did an interview that I watched on YouTube with Brian McKellen, and he was in his Learn to Write Fantasy class at BYU, which if you've any time looking at Brandon Sanderson stuff on YouTube, you'll see, I think Camera Panda has most of them, but basically they're just lectures on writing fantasy stories. And Brian McKellen was in that class. So really cool. And then the first Law series, which this is the first book, The Blade Itself. Heard great things about it. Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, he swears by this series. Joe Abercrombie has had his name thrown around a lot to finish up the Game of Thrones series. And when George R.R. Martin dies and doesn't finish the series, which looks like it's going to happen, hopefully not. Hopefully he gets to finish his own series. And then the one I voted for was Leviathan Wakes. Heard it's a really good space opera. Watched the first 2 episodes on Amazon Prime, and it's really, really good. I've heard that maybe I need to watch the show first so the surprises come. So maybe I want to wait and finish watching season 1 before I read this one. Let me know. I'd love to know if how I should do that. But hoping to start this the first of the year through the book club. And if you guys can, please just go check it out. There's a link in the description, and I'm really excited to maybe talk with you guys and join with you guys. Hopefully they've actually asked me to help them make the site better. So any feedback you can give me that you're like, hey, I wish the site did this, I can present to them, and we can try to make it better as a team, as a group. So a couple graphic novels I wanted to get into. Why the Last Man was highly recommended to me by one of my wife's friends who is definitely into graphic novels, and seems really, really neat. Guy is the last man on Earth. Let me hold it up for you a little bit. But he's the last man on Earth in a world filled with women. Kind of slightly futuristic sci-fi, and seems really, really neat. He's got a monkey. I've always liked monkeys. I don't know if it's going to be one of those like fantasy kind of things where he gets to be with all the ladies, but excited to read this one. Sounds cool. This one was really great. I read this one a while back, but I don't remember enough about it to read on the channel. So I wanted to redo this one, and it's Fables. And so what happens is all the fairy tale creatures had to leave their worlds and end up in New York. And like this guy is the sheriff. He's the big bad wolf. There was a game, Telltale Games did it. It was Wolf in Clothing. Oh, man, I can't remember what it was. But it was a good game. I played it. There's a ton of F words in it, though. Not for kids. Not at all. But it was an interesting game. And so you got like the pig. There's like a farm, too, where like the creatures that could not really make it in the city, they went out to this farm. So that's, I think, number 2 or 3. I've only read 1 so far. I'm going to reread it and then review on the channel for, this is going to be neat. Another one I really want to do is Berserk. I'll put a picture of it right here. The one of the coolest mangas. I've heard that the fan base is that just die-hard fan base. I really want to jump into it and learn more about it. That on Netflix they have 3 movies right now which cover the first arc of Berserk. It was really neat to kind of learn who Guts is, who's the main character. He has this giant sword. He has really this I don't care about anybody else attitude. Then he learns to be part of a group, and just really interesting story. I really wanted to jump into the manga and see the story as it initially was, because I've heard even as much as I enjoyed the anime that they had on Netflix, it's not good enough, and it's not enough. And another booktuber, she was kind of talking about how the way that a woman was depicted in the series, she felt was just totally a horrible way of depicting a woman. Something awful happens to her, and just the way that they treat her is horrible. And I kind of had a different take on it. Yes, she's treated horribly. I don't say that she's not, but it was more of the way that she spoke about it was like her story was to just further the male's perspective, and I felt that it was really more of a betrayal on that standpoint, and really wanted to read the manga to feel it. Maybe in the anime that I saw on TV, it didn't feel that way as much, and maybe that's where I'm kind of getting a different perspective. So I want to dig into it. It's really expensive, um, so I'm hoping to catch it on sale somewhere and read that this year. So next, I want to go into a couple rereads that I've got. I want to do Ken Follett, The Pillars of the Earth. I read this one in high school. Probably shouldn't have. If a book had a R rating, this wouldn't be it. But it's really cool. It's about a town called Kingsbridge, and the people that basically move there, and they're building a cathedral because the initial one caught on fire. Happens really early, and there's a man who's a stonemason, kind of comes into town right at the right time, and there's another lady that comes in later, and kind of get her early years, and a few different, just a bunch of different characters come into this town of Kingsbridge, and it spans about 3 generations. So it's really neat to see the progression through 3 generations of really the cathedral being built. It's more about that than the story, but the characters are really well done. All the relationships are interesting, even if they're not always the most healthy relationships. But I really like this book. The book 2 was good as well. They did a mini series on it, and excited to read some more Ken Follett and then maybe review it on the channel. A couple of the books for me that are rereads are The Magic of Recluse, which is by Ellie Modesitt. It's a story about 2 different types of magicians. You have order magicians and you have chaos magicians. And Lyris is the first character we deal with, and he comes from an island, the island of Recluse, and they are mostly order magicians on this island. And he basically has to do like the Amish rite. They send him off into the mainland, and that's where all the chaos magicians live. And he has to basically make it in that land for a while. And then if he chooses to come back and be an order magician, or whatever, he gets to come back. So I really want to review it on the channel, but I don't feel I'll do it justice if I don't reread it first. So I wanted to do that. And I did another Find Myth on the channel not too long ago, reread it. This one, it just gets funnier and funnier as the series goes along. I think Robert Aspin really got his stride, and he learned how to be more comedic and had better timing. Once they're in the bazaar, it just gets really good. So I think this is book 3. I want to try to pick up book 2. I have 4 or 5 of them. Hopefully I can knock them all out. They're about 200 pages a piece, so they shouldn't take that long. Wanted to reread those and review them on the channel as well. Coming of Wisdom is book 2 in the 7 Swords series, where I reviewed The Reluctant Swordsman. Want to reread this one like I did that, and reviewed on the channel. Also want to do another book series next year on the channel by Dave Duncan, which is the Magic Casement series, where he's basically a young wagon driver, has really great luck, and kind of knows the princess, and then the princess is pushed through a magic window, and he has to go find her. and it's a really great series. 3 books in that series, and then I think there's also a follow-up series where you kind of see the progression of the story as well, and that's really really neat. I think, man, Dave Duncan doesn't get enough love on YouTube, and I really want people to know him. He died back a couple years ago, and his stories are fantastic. He wrote about 50 books, and I barely hear anybody talk about him. He's a fantastic author. I'd love for more people to get to know who Dave Duncan is and jump into that series. And then Ender's Game is a book that I read also back in high school and want to review on the channel, but I don't remember it well enough to jump in and really tell you what's going on here. I could do a general review and say, hey, this book is about a young kid who's learning to be in the military in a sci-fi world. He becomes a brilliant strategist and learns a bunch of stuff. So that's what I remember at the time, and I want to jump back in. I haven't seen the new movie. I've actually heard it's really good. Maybe after I reread the book, I'll watch the movie again. It's got Harrison Ford in it. I love Harrison Ford. Indiana Jones is top 5 characters that I can think of. Really want to get into Ender's Game and dig into this for sure. And I have a bunch more sci-fi that I'm going to tell you about, but these are the ones I have physically, and I'll probably add Dune to the list. I'll put a picture of that up here. Dune by Frank Herbert is one of the first sci-fi books that I ever read, and I really, really loved it. Every adaptation that they have of it, I watch. The Sting version back in the 80s was great, and it was really cool where he's dancing around, I will kill him, and the miniseries was even better. I don't even remember who put the miniseries out, but it was really, really, really good. I think they did that like early 2000s, and then there's a new movie coming out soon. So I'd love to reread Dune and just jump back into the series. It got weird. I read like God Emperor of Dune and Children of Dune, and man, like after the first book, it did get really, really weird. And I've heard once his son took over, it got even more weird. But I'm excited to get back into Dune because I remember how much I love Dune. I've actually watched a couple booktubers and they're like, oh, I didn't understand it or I didn't like it. And I remember thinking, I don't know, like, I remember loving this. So I'd love to get back in and see if maybe my more adult mind enjoys it as much as I used to back in the day. But I remember loving it and really, really, really enjoying it. I think I read it and then reread it. That's how much I liked it. So The Martian by Andy Weir, I've heard recommended all over the place. Found it very, very cheaply because it's in bad condition at secondhand books, and I picked it up. Don't like these movie covers. I talked about that in another video. Probably would love to get a better version of this cover. Maybe even, once I read this one, repurpose it, resell it, and then get a good cover of this one. But excited because I've heard it's so good. Red Rising is a sci-fi, kind of sounds more like a sci-fantasy where he's like, his wife is taken, his people are enslaved, driven by a longing for justice and the memory of a lost love. Daryl will stop at nothing to bring down his enemies, even if he must become one of them to do so. So he might join the military, not 100% sure, but I've heard nothing but good things about this series. Pierce Brown seems like a pretty good guy. I've heard some interviews that he's done, and would love to jump into this series this year. And then classic sci-fi, man. I really want to dig into it more often. I actually have Starship Troopers somewhere. I want to hop into it as well, by Robert Heinlein. If you've seen the movie, supposedly the book's quite different. The movie is more of a spoof, and the book is more serious. And then iRobot, I kind of got distracted there. But iRobot is classic, man. The cool thing about iRobot is Asimov wrote basically the laws of robotics. And I'm hoping that you really get to see that in this book. It's not long. I mean, it hopefully will be a quick, easy read for me, and I'll hop into it and I'll really dig into it. The other trilogy that he does, I can't think of the name of it right now. I'm thinking The Foundation, but that may not be right. It's more of a deep read, I've heard, so wanted to start here and then jump in there. Hopefully I get to that this year as well. I've read a lot of Stephen King this year, probably 3 or 4 books. So I was able to pick up The Shining by Stephen King and wanted to read that this year as well. So I've heard that the movie and the book are very different. Haven't seen either one. Wanted to read. I'm that weird guy that wants to read the book first. That way I understand where everything's coming from. and wanted to hop in and read this book this year and then watch the movie because I've heard the movie's fantastic. Like anybody who talks about classic horror always talks about The Shining, and I'm one of those weird people that haven't seen it. So I want to see it, but I want to read the book first. So this is on my probably has to be done this year so that I can watch The Shining. Maybe even before Halloween next year. So excited about that. Got a couple fantasy reads that I want to hop into next year. We have Glenn Cook and the Black Company. This is book 1, 2, and 3. You have the Black Company, Shadows Linger, and the White Rose. Heard very good things about this one. Military fantasy, which always gets me going. I love a good battle. I love a good battle scene. I love the camaraderie between dudes as they're fighting, and fantasy is really great about having women be part of that company, which in medieval times in real life that didn't really happen. So it's neat to have that as well, and really see the camaraderie there. Fantasy is great about that. It brings a side to war and battle that you wouldn't normally see in the history books and things like that. So excited. Don't know much about it, but heard good things about it. So excited about Black Company and how much fun this will be. So I've watched a few episodes of the Outlander series on Netflix, and so far I like it. It's very good. Heavy on the romance. Not sure if the book will be as heavy on the romance, but some of the action and stuff in the book has been really, really good. Hopefully we get that part of it. I'm not sure if we follow the female character's perspective through the whole book, but she does some really cool stuff. She's a nurse in the 1940s, right after World War II, and then goes to Scotland and gets taken back in time to like 17th century or 16th century Scotland. So it's definitely interesting, and really, found it for a great price at Barnes and Noble. It was on sale for less than 50%. I think it was 75% off. So I was like, hey man, I'll check that out. I've watched a couple episodes of the series. And then I've got The Witcher, and read the first series in this one. This is a couple short stories. This is the one they say to start with. Hopefully read a few of these books. This is the video game cover, and I've been playing the video game and I love it, which I know this is way before the video game. I think all of his books, and then you have the first video game, and then when we do the Netflix series, that's going to be book stuff. But it sounds like they're kind of pulling from all of them. It's not really like not following the storyline as much. So Witcher, man, I love his character, and I really want to dig into the books more. I don't think I'll get to it this year, probably first part of next year. That's why I'm putting it on this next year TBR. And then to wrap up, I had some classics. I enjoy classics. When I was younger, my mom got a bunch of these abridged versions, which, man, if you're going to read classics, like I struggled with Robin Hood this year and I DNF'd it because just the way it was written was not my style of reading. I don't know if maybe it's just the way that writing has changed, and maybe I'm so used to the newer style, but I actually DNF'd that book because I didn't like the way it was written. So I'm excited for some classics, and hopefully I can find some abridged versions that I can read with my kids. Because for me, as a teenager, or even as like a young kid in middle school, reading them that way was great. I know it's not the classic version, and I know people probably, be like snobby about it and say, you're not reading it the way it was intended, and you're reading an abridged version, which basically updates the writing mostly. You look at Moby Dick, that's a hard read, and the abridged version wasn't. So if you can get those classic stories in a way that's easily digestible, I say more power to you. But I've got this really cool version. I found it at Barnes & Noble for $10. The Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Man, this thing is cool. It's leather bound instead of like hard cardboard. But check this out. It's got like this interior cover, and then you've got the sayings on the back. Man, this thing's neat. It's got the the red binding. Beautiful. I love this thing, man. I read it, like I said, in a bridge version a long time ago, and want to reread it and review it on the channel. Man, that might be a Halloween read as well. Got bored with this one. To Kill a Mockingbird is a American classic. Everyone says you should read it, and I understand that. And I listened to it on my Libby app, and you have a time limit. It's like returning books to the library. and I didn't feel it. I got maybe 10 chapters in and was just kind of So I'm hoping to get back to it this year. I have the physical copy. Found this. We actually lost it and had to buy it from the library, but found it again. And so excited to jump back into that one. And then I want to read this one with my kiddos. This is Wizard of Oz, classic story. They made a cool movie about it. I don't know if you heard about it. They have a witch, and they have this road that's made with these yellow bricks, and they sing a really cool song all about that road. So really excited to read this one with the kiddos, and hopefully review it on the channel as well. I know there's be some things about COPPA, and it may get put in a weird designation, but hopefully all that blows over and we're all happy in the YouTube world. So if you can, please join the Bookie Club. Even if you just join to check it out and say, you know, hey, this isn't for me, at least if you can, please click the link. It would help me out immensely. This sponsor is brand new, and they're hoping to drive traffic to their channel. Even if 1 or 2 people click, it lets them know that hey, maybe they spent some good money on me, and that partnership can keep going because they seem to be really great people, and I'm excited to work with them. And I love you guys. Hopefully we can all read a bunch of books together in 2020. It's gonna be a fun year. Talk to you later. Bye.